Alright, so our next variable is the axis, or later when we do the linear methods, it's the line. But right now it's the axis because we're dealing with spindles. So some important things about that, some principal factors regarding variables, regarding the axis variable, is your distance from the arch of your foot, for one thing. If when you have this set here, if this is too close to your shoe and it's too close to your foot, not only is it going to burn your foot, okay, but you don't want the cord or anything or the spindle rubbing up against your foot and interfering with the process that you're trying to do. Now, something that I forget because it's not in front of me, out of sight, out of mind, is that I don't wear shoes that have laces. Because I'm half Chinese, you know, in our home, we take our shoes off, so we don't wear shoes with laces, you know, shoes, you don't bring your shoes into the house kind of thing. So a lot of our shoes are slip-on. So I don't really think about this all the time, but shoes that have laces, you have to get the laces out of the way. And I recall that from hundreds of times of, you know, working with students at the school. One of the first things I would tell them when I see them get set is, okay, get your laces out of the way. I would say that all the time. But I never have to do that because I never have shoes that have laces on them. But I have to tell you to do that because you probably do. So another thing you have to do with your axis is you have to align it to make sure that you're not drifting. So when you get set, and you have to kind of eyeball it from back here because you're looking at your notch, but you have to look at everything that's going on as a whole, okay, in your peripheral vision. You have to look at everything, feel what's going on, but you have to also feel through kinesthetic awareness if your axis is correct or not, and that you're not drifting. You're not off on some strange angle, all right? And your height is very important regarding the straightness of your spindle, because the longer your spindle, the more careful you have to be about it being straight, because a shorter spindle, that's less distance you have to worry about it being straight, but a shorter spindle is also harder to work with. So a good average spindle, 7, maybe 8 inches, even 8 inches is getting kind of tall. 6 inches is usually good. You just have to make sure that when you roll it, that there's no real bumps in it. It's not oval. All right, it's got a very good straight line going through its center. All right. So we're going to string this on the rattan bow. Our pressure hand brace is also Lombardy poplar. Okay, as well as the base and the spindle. And you can see it's already flattened from sphering. Now, this hole was already used a couple times. I think maybe we got one more chance out of this. So we're going to see, okay, how we do. But I think right now, this pressure hand brace, see that? That's too shallow. That's not deep enough for it to really work. So I'm going to grab my soapstone, which happens to be right here, because I'm not going to try and make that pressure hand brace work unless it was the only one I had. If it was the only one I had, I'd have to carve it out or really grind it or something. See, look at that move. Look at that base move, because it doesn't want to turn. Good that you see me struggle with this. because it remains challenging. Use the whole cord for rotations and for speed. Okay. And there's our coal. Having a straight line is vital. Very vital. There you have it. Okay, next. Alright, so our next variable is rotations. And our core two devices are going to be made out of sassafras. Now look at this little tiny base here. Look how small it is. It's basically just like a fragment of a branch. So, and we're going to try to eke out that last little bit of material that's in there. As you can see, it has a reverse dead space center in there from this spindle. It's a little short. It's 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters. Okay. And it's very straight. Now, I probably should have used this example for the last variable, but look at this spindle. See how crooked it is? This is a branch of sassafras. Now watch this. Watch this roll. And believe it or not, this thing just works. Although we're not using this spindle. But it has worked. Obviously I'm going to wear a shoe to keep this steady. The notch is toward me, so this will be a little tough to see. But that's how we're going to get it going. We're going to put our cold transfer device down. And we're going to use our smaller bamboo bow because the small spindle and the small diameter of it should really help. And we're going to use our soapstone pressure hand brace. Get all set up. Let's see how we do. That's already moving from the unilateral force. In fact, the cold transfer device isn't even moving. That's, I could tell right off the bat, that's going to, the coal isn't even going to be able to form. So guess what we're going to do? You guessed it. Since we're not on the ground, we're going to hold that down. Since we're not outside, I can't pin it to the ground. Alright, here we go. And those nails should not get in the way of my bowing. Use the whole cord for rotations. The whole cord. Okay, let's see what we got. I'm going to show you what we have. Does this look familiar? Look familiar? No coal, but look at the fuel, the dust. Is it powdery? No, it's not. It's these black striations again. So we're going to commit that to memory. And we're going to move on. Okay, ready? Let's go. Alright, so our next variable is duration and time. And for our example, we're going to use swamp maple, which came from the Pine Barrens. And the notch is pretty high, and so what I'm going to do is not fill it with coal extender. We're just going to keep going until the whole notch is full of dust that I have to create, just for this example. So, which is really, the longer you go, the more friction you create, the longer you go. You get two kinds of friction, remember. Friction that raises temperature and friction that causes abrasion. So the abrasion friction creates the coal dust. So, but how much do we really need? Well, we need to fill the notch if you don't have coal extender or you can't fill it with something else to fill that space. So this is going to require more energy for you to go longer. And you really have to work to keep that temperature up. Now, the diameter of this short little spindle, which it's 5 inches long, or 12.5 centimeters, but it's really thick. It's 3/4 of an inch. And swamp maple is a little hard, so I've hollowed it out, okay, to help reduce that surface area, because 3/4 of an inch of surface area for a spindle this hard is going to be tough enough. Something else I want to show you real quick is you could see this knot here and a knot here, okay, and a knot here that runs through the spindle. Now that's another density hardness issue. Now when the spindle goes down, it's going to get closer to that knot, and those knots are changes in hardness. They're harder than the rest of the wood. So you always have to keep that in mind. Since I didn't have a spindle before to show you that with those examples, I'm showing you now. Alright. A pressure hand brace is also a piece of swamp maple. Alright. And I'm hoping that the socket hole is actually kind of wide for this piece. So I'm hoping it's going to stay in. But look, I already nailed this thing to the board, to the table, because I know it's just going to be swinging all over the place. Now with a diameter this big, with the unilateral forces of the bow, okay, with a base this small, I'm in trouble already, okay, with a surface this smooth. There's no friction on the table, as you see this moving back and forth automatically. So these are important lessons to see. You know, I'm not really going to hide anything. So when you do a demonstration for other people, you have to keep this in mind. When I do demonstrations for other people, I bring my own surfaces, because I don't do this on like people's floors, or I do it on their tables. I can't damage their equipment, their stuff, because that would be really bad relations, for one thing. It's not that I'm going to put nails in anything, but I don't want there to be burn marks. There's coal dust everywhere, stuff gets dirty, you know, my knife is around. So I like to have my own surface, so that if something gets damaged, it's mine. I don't have to worry about it, okay? So if you go and you are doing like a demonstration, or you're doing a workshop, doing this kind of thing, make sure you not only have your own stuff, your own tools, your own materials, you have your own work area, okay, for whatever it is that you need. And I'm telling you that now from experience. Alright, so we're going to use our large rattan bow, and I put the camera a little more close up so you can see this really go. I'm going to get in position. Hoping this pressure hand brace really does hold this together here. Otherwise, I got my soapstone on standby. Using the whole cord, get as much rotation as I can, pressure. That pressure is going to add to the friction, which causes more abrasion. More abrasion means more dust to fill the notch. Whew. All right. All right. It almost seemed like we had it, right? Look what we have. What do we have there? That's right. See that stuff? More black striations. And no coal. We commit that to memory. On to the next. Alright, so our next variable is speed. Okay. The speed, as you know, is one of the things that helps raise temperature, so that we can get it to that critical igniting temperature. Alright, so we're going to use sweet gum today, which was collected from South Jersey. There's a couple spare pieces to show. This becomes fairly light. So this is our base. I flattened this one part here of this very large branch and able to receive this spindle. The spindle is pretty small. It's 4 inches or about 10 centimeters. Okay, it's a hair over ½ an inch in diameter. See the sphering on there? First thing I'm going to do is flatten that to help concentrate the surface area on the rim of the bottom. Alright, and that's going to shorten the spindle even more, so you keep that in mind. I'm going to try and not wear a shoe and see if the board will stay in place. I don't have a sweet gum pressure hand brace, so I'm going to use our soapstone. But the first thing I'm going to do is flatten this, and then we're going to get going. Alright, so we're back, and we're going to use our bamboo bow. The diameter on this is kind of small, so we'll use a smaller bow. Although our variable right now is speed. We want a lot of speed. And with the smaller bow, I may be able to go a little faster than I am with the larger bow. We'll see. I have the notch toward you. I could get the whole thing under the arch of my foot, which is good. It's kind of promising. Alright, so we get sit up. Got my towel under my knee. Let's get some warm-up strokes. Looks like it's warming up. So we're gonna go for speed and rotations. Plenty of speed. Use the whole cord. Grab everything as a unit and let's see what we have. And that is a coal, ladies and gentlemen. Let's pop that out of there. All right, on to the next. Alright, so our next variable is space. Our material that we're going to show off now is box elder, and this particular branch, well actually if you recall, I showed you the box elder tree that's in my yard, and that I'm going to go get the nascent growths that are on that later. As soon as it gets cold enough, I'm going to cut those off. But this was a branch that was high up in the tree. There were no other dead branches I could reach. I mean, it was over 12 feet off the ground. I had to get my extension ladder, go up there and go get it. So these are some spindles I got from just one branch that was up there. So here's one base made from that same branch. Okay, it's already been mated. I've already gotten a coal out of this one too. But our spindle is a little short. So we're talking about space. Well, I don't have much space here to actually have much room to groove to be able to do bowing. This is a 4-inch spindle, or just past 10 centimeters. It's a little over ½ an inch in diameter. And so the things about space, you have to cut, like I said before, you have to get out of your own way. When you're in position, you have to be able to not be in your way when you're bowing. Okay, that's one thing. Your spindle needs to be on the outside of the cord. It should not be on the inside of the cord where the bow is, because you limit yourself to the length of the cord. So the fact that the spindle is on the outside, you are able to travel more along the length and get more rotation. So don't cut off your own space by having the spindle on the inside anyway. You don't want it on the inside because it's trapped. Have your shoelaces out of the way, because that'll interfere with the space. It could get bound up in what it is that you're doing. I kind of mentioned that already. And as a really short spindle, I don't have much room to work with, especially if this was a natural cordage and I needed to keep the bow at an angle where the cord could travel and ride up and down. Alrighty, so we're going to get in position. I'm not going to wear a shoe. I might be able to handle this just underfoot. The bottom is rounded, so it may move on me a little bit. And my pressure hand brace is going to be our friend the soapstone today. I flattened the bottom already from the sphering that took place before with the first attempt. And we're going to see how this goes. I'm using the whole cord to get as much rotation as I can. A bit of speed. Keep going, keep going. Got plenty of space to work with. And we're gonna grab that as a unit and see how we did. And there's our coal. Box elder. Funny thing about this wood is, I don't know if you could see that red streak in there. Apparently when this wood dies, there's a fungus that creates this kind of color throughout the wood. It's one of the identifying markers. Sometimes you could see in the cross section there that the fungus moves through the wood entirely. So here's a cut of it, but when you do a cross section you could see it in there too. Alright. And there we go. On to the next. Alright, so our next variable is surface area. And one of the important things that I've been bringing up recently is negative surface area, as I call it. So if the holes are positive surface area, like the business end of what it is that we're really focusing on, there's things that you don't really focus on, but are there and are necessary. It's kind of like a painting. I mean, you look at the colors, you look at the image that's in the painting, but it's held on a canvas, for example. So you don't really think about the canvas, but it's there and it supports everything. So this is what I mean by negative surface area. Even though the spindle is riding here in the hole, we're looking at the spindle and the hole and the notch. You don't really look at everything else sometimes, okay? So consideration that your hole is actually far back into the base enough where the hole isn't sitting too close to the edge, where there isn't any negative surface area to be able to support it. I mentioned that in the containment or the notch. So again, that does apply here, as everything just crosses over into all the other variables anyway. So our material today is forsythia. Forsythia, as you probably know, is an ornamental bush that you buy in garden centers and things like that. I have one huge forsythia shrub bush over here, and I always have to keep cutting it back. So one day I just decided to give it a try to see if this would work as a spindle. I don't have something big enough for a base, but it definitely does work. It has a bit of a pithy center, not enough to really make a difference, but you can definitely see that there's a pithy center in there. All right. And our brace end and our base end are clarified. The base end, all the bark is taken off so that nothing interferes there. I kind of left the bark on because it doesn't seem to interfere. It's not fibrous, so nothing is really coming off. And two short spindles here that I have here on the side. The base we're going to use is tamarack. Pretty big base too. Got a big notch in there. Okay, a lot of negative surface area to work with. Our pressure hand brace has negative surface area. I can get my fingers around that. It's just far enough away from the socket hole for the ball and socket brace end to work. Okay. Surface area. So the working end of this, of the positive surface area, all right, is always the outside rim of the diameter. So we always want to flatten and get rid of this sphering that happens because of the dead space center. All right. And if this was hollow, if we did this once or twice, the center inside would have a dead space hollow. We would need to pop that button out if necessary. All right. And the other thing too is too much surface area isn't good. It's not a good thing. Then you need more pressure, you need more energy, you lessen rotations because the diameter is bigger. So more isn't always better. So you have to kind of feel what is a good diameter size for you. Hand drills, mount drills, bow drills, and we're going to do other methods as well. And you have to find what the right surface area is that works for you, as well as bouncing all the other variables. So this spindle here is really an average spindle. It's 6.5 inches. It's just over half an inch, which is really nice. Half an inch always works well for me. Okay. It's not too tall. Actually, too tall, too high a spindle isn't good either, because I can't straighten my arm because my arm gets too high. It can't really, the higher the spindle, it feels like you're kind of like on stilts where your center of gravity is really off. So you really have to find what's a good height for you as well. And about 6 inches is usually good for me. So I cut my spindles around 8 inches when I have them, because I can always take off material, but you can't put it back on. Okay. So we're going to use our rattan bow. Alright. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to face it toward you as best I can here. Okay. Some warm-up strokes. Speed and rotation. Use the whole cord. Keep everything nice and steady. see what we got. We have a coal forming. It's oxidizing. Take our nail and get that out of there. So it gets air. The more air it gets, the more it's going to take off on its own. Okay? So balance your surface area. Last one. All right, and finally, our last variable is stability. Stability is a huge one, and there's a lot to go over. So make sure that when you are setting up for your set here, you have to make sure that you're not tilting your pressure handbrace, because if you do this, it flips right out. Okay, so this should be deeply set, so you really shouldn't let off. Bring the pressure handbrace up, because when you do, the cord is just going to flip this across the room, as you've seen. So, and when you limit your space, like you do with having a short spindle and things like that, like you saw before with the Tamarack, well, there you go. I mean, it's just kind of obvious. And it's just frustrating to have to keep chasing your spindle all the time. But it happens. Just don't get frustrated. Just keep going. A big thing that we've been going over is the take ori, where the unilateral forces, if your spindle is really fragile, will just crack in half. Especially the taller it is, the taller your spindle and the more fragile it is, the more chance it's just going to crack. It's just going to take ori on you. So your height in relation to the unilateral force is very key. The shorter your spindle, the less chance of breakage. Okay, and the more dense, the harder your spindle is, the less that's going to happen as well. So obviously the woods are less fragile than the plant stalks. Make sure that when you're carving your devices that you are following the grain. So it'll be obvious with plant stalks, you don't really have to worry about that. But when you're carving spindles out of wood, you really should try to follow the grain as best you can, so that there's no run out. Any kind of run out is a weak spot, and a unilateral force against that weak spot could possibly crack your spindle. So don't, make sure you pay attention to that and don't let it happen in the first place. Your board, now your grain should be running along the length of the board, okay? So it shouldn't be running across the board this way. Your grain should always be running the entire length of the board this way. But you do have to be careful that when you start placing holes next to each and every one, that these places here where the notches are, those things just break off. They break off all the time. So give yourself a little bit more space sometimes. If you have a lot of material to work with, then don't worry about it. If you are limited on space and material, well, that's training for you to see how close you can get a hole and a notch together without the grain cracking out on you there and falling apart on you. It will happen. Don't worry about it. It's a lesson. It's part of the training. Just keep going. For stability, make sure your arm and your hand and your leg are all one unit. Okay, your leg kind of represents a pillar, and you brace your arm and your hand around it, and just keep working on that. All right. Make sure that when you set into your position, it's kind of a triangular position. You don't want to be like falling over or anything like that. Oh, another thing too is don't do your method on sloped ground. If the ground is on an angle, you really got to find a flat spot. If the ground is on an angle, you're going to feel really, really off. In fact, I would recommend you go find a place that is kind of sloped and then try to actually do a bow drill and see how you feel. It feels really awful. So, and then you'll never forget it. But then again, you could also let that be part of your training and try to actually do a method while you're feeling a little unstable on ground that is not flat. Okay. Obviously, you saw me nailing my board to the table, but I would ordinarily be pinning it to the ground if I was outside or that kind of situation. Wearing shoes instead of barefoot, you see me go back and forth depending on how I feel about the board, about the base, in its size, and I think how if it's going to move. You just kind of play it by ear, and then if it's not working, you just change. It just happens to be the during phase of your awareness of what's going on, and you just make adjustments as you go on the fly. Make sure that all your matings are deeply set in the base as well as the pressure hand brace, the base end, the brace end. Make sure everything is deeply set so nothing just goes popping out, flying out. All right. And I think we're ready to give this a shot. We're going to push the limits, and we're going to do a natural cordage. Actually, this is the yucca cordage you saw earlier, on an extremely fragile cattail stalk spindle. And because this is such low density and very fragile, we're going to do a sodal board. All right, the one you saw earlier. Pressure hand brace really doesn't matter, but it's going to be the oak one, and it's got a lot of good negative surface area where I can get my hand around it. You remember this one. All right. So we're going to do our best to not break our spindle. So I'm going to bend our bow on my shoulder, get the cord in position. I'm going to keep the bow at an angle. Alright. Let's see how we do. So these are two very low density woods, sodal and cattail. Hear the squeak? Hear the sound change? So we use a little bit of pressure to break through that. Looks like we're doing good. Let's keep going. Oh, and there we go. There's our takeori. But look what we got. Pulled it off, but look at the cost. But the tribe gets to live. Cattail, bow drill, spindle. So we kept everything balanced. In balance right up to the end. Just made it. Alright. On to art of the variation. Going to see some crazy things. Alright. Love it. Here we go. All right, and welcome to the third segment of the bow drill, Art of the Variation. And we're in our what if section here. We get to play around and just kind of fool around with things. So I keep using a metaphor comparison of martial arts. I mean, this is a dojo. Many years ago, during my training, I asked myself if, because martial arts is an art form, it's a science and an art that unfortunately has to deal with hurting people or controlling people, but for defending life. I mean, if you're not the person that's being violent on purpose first, there's someone else that is violent or causing conflict, and you need to control that situation, not necessarily the person, but the violence that's involved, and de-escalate that and make sure that everyone is safe, not just yourself. So that's why we call it warriorship arts, because you protect and defend everybody. So a long time ago, I'm asking myself how I could find it to be fun to hurt people. It seems like that's like it would be an emotional problem, you would think, right? So I had to delve deep into what made training in martial arts so fun, something that seemingly we would all, as normal, natural human beings, would want to avoid is violence. But in a lot of soul searching, I came to find that it was really an appreciation for how such a dangerous but necessary vocation was done, how it was accomplished. Because we would watch and look at our sensei in Japan, Hatsumi Sensei, and the things he can do, and they are just really amazing. He could get you to see things in ways you would never see before, perspectives you would never have guessed. And a lot of times we use the same metaphor of giving birth when a technique is created out of nowhere. The creativity in the dojo can be pretty amazing. So I think the same thing applies here, because I keep using the metaphor of like reproductive biology for the friction fire, and because, well, basically it's just the way of nature, I think. So I think the main answer to that is just appreciation for the science and art of it, of how saving lives, how far that can go as a vocation, as a skill, as a structure and function. So I'm going to show you some odds and ends. These are a few that I have in front of me, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. Okay? All right. Alright, so the first ones we're going to do are some wooden reload examples. This one is simply an oak dowel that is, let's see, what is it? That is, it's over 1/2 inch. It's 5/8 of an inch in diameter, and it's approximately just under 8 inches, or 19.5 centimeters long. Okay. It's got a, it's drilled and quartered, and you have to be very careful when you do this, because what happens is a lot of times these flares, they break along the grain, and they will just come right off if you're not careful. So what I do a lot of times is I'll put a hose clamp, as you've seen before, around those to help secure that in there. Not only to secure the reload, but to secure the flares so that they don't break off, because they will. I have a bamboo chopstick piece in there. Okay, that's in there. And we're gonna grease that a little bit. And I'm just gonna warm this one up here. This is Atlantic white cedar. Okay. So bamboo on Atlantic white cedar. You can use the bamboo bow, small one. Now, all of these ones that I'm going to show you, they don't require that you be careful with take ori. That's not going to happen, because all these are hardwoods or metals, as you'll see. So we don't have to worry about breakage in that sense. So I'm going to use this Osage block, which is left over from bow making, as in bow and arrow making. Okay. Now I'm not going to wear a shoe, but I'm just going to warm this one up because I'm going to show you another one too. Okay. Now you can see what happens is, if this is not secure, see what happens? It starts to come out one side. That's why I want to show you this. Okay, see how uneven that is? So that's a complication of doing something like this. Alright, so I wanted you to see that. So this, you might remember, it's a drumstick. Okay, I used this earlier for the mouth drill variations, and the same thing here. This is a shorter version of the drumstick because it's cut, and this one is secured with the hose clamp with the bamboo chopstick. Okay, so we're gonna grease that top. Okay, now for a handhold, for a pressure mouth brace, pressure hand brace, this is an actual piece of ebony, which I got in Japan. Came in a small block, so I made a spindle, a base, and a pressure hand brace out of this, and this is the pressure hand brace. Just because it's black, I want it to match up. Although the drumstick, by the way, is hickory, as you can see there. So again, we don't have to worry about take ori. We're using our store cordage. And see how much smoother that is, because this is really off. The axis is off because it's breaking out the side. Okay. Much smoother action. All right. That works real nice, right? But the one that I'm going to show you here is Osage Orange. Okay, and I believe this was made by my friend Dan Stanchfield. And his piece here is the drilled hole with the quartered flares with a small piece of yucca tucked in there. And this, since this is carved Osage orange, it's like indestructible. This piece is a little short, but it's tall enough. With the reload, it's 6 inches, or 16 centimeters approximately. Because it's Osage orange, we're going to use a very small pressure hand brace of Osage orange. As you can see, I have a pretty good collection of stuff. Using the whole cord. Whole cord. And there's our coal. That was easy, right? I didn't put down my coal transfer device, obviously. Okay. Alright. Now these other two I'm going to show. This one is also Osage orange, carved by Dan. But this one is not flared. This one is just straight drilled. Okay, so it receives a very large reload. This is a reload of yucca. So we have to secure that in there. Okay, careful you don't break your reload if you're going to do something like that. This is really low density, so it could crack. Okay. And unfortunately the notch is not toward you. We're going to put that there. This one's really large. It's at least 1 inch in diameter. Okay. The drill itself is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. Okay. I'm going to use the big bow, big bamboo bow for this. I'm not going to need a lot of power because it's yucca. I'm going to use this Osage half section of a sapling. Okay. You can see the difference in the coloring, right? The heartwood is orange and the sapwood is white. And this has the bark still on it. Alright. Use the whole cord for rotations, speed, with just enough pressure. And we got a big, huge coal there. That's a big one, right? There we go. Now this last one I'll show you, that's wood, is really my favorite. This was done on a lathe, a machine lathe, at a guy I know. His name is Greg. He has a lathe at home, and he let me borrow it just to make this piece. This is this wood is a very rare wood. It's one of the hardest woods in the world, and it's called lignum vitae. And there's a lot of woods that kind of go by this name, apparently, because it's well sought out for its hardness. But this is the official lignum vitae. And I got a good block of it that I had ordered from a place that is official in supplying the actual lignum vitae. And with some of those sections I got I made a pressure hand brace. out of the lignum vitae as well. Okay, probably one of the hardest woods in the world. And then we drilled a hole in there with no quarter flares in there. The reload is actually Atlantic white cedar. So we're going to do Atlantic white cedar on Atlantic white cedar, but first I'm going to carefully flatten our spindle base end and take the sphering off that's on there. Okay, and we're going to do a multiple hole example here. So I'm going to take that out. Let's see if that will. So we don't really need the coal transfer device because we don't need to catch it, but because it should catch in the previous hole. Again, I'm going to use the big bow, and I'm going to use the lignum vitae pressure hand brace. All right, should I grease that a little bit? Use the whole cord. Whole cord. Nice long strokes. A lot of speed. Now you have time, let it form. And there we go. All right. All right. On to the next. Okay, so the next one I'm going to show you is a funny little one. This is actually a rawhide dog chew, okay, that you'll find in like a convenience store, like a Walmart or a Target or something like that. And what I've done is that in each end, I shoved a bamboo chopstick. So the top part is our brace end, piece of bamboo in there, and the bottom end I shoved the other piece in for a base end. Okay. And I had to find one that was fairly straight, because when you get a bag of these things, they're not all straight, because obviously they're just dog chews and you just don't care. But so this is just sheets of rawhide rolled up, wrapped up, and with a small hollow center that I was able to shove the bamboo in there. So obviously the rawhide supports the bamboo, and we're going to use this on my small bamboo bow, and we're going to do this on a small section of Atlantic white cedar again. Okay, now my pressure hand brace is a funny little thing. It's half a yo-yo. A yo-yo I found in the toy section, and I picked this one obviously because it's got a cool scorpion inside of it, right? So split it in half, and I use this one half for using it as a brace. All right, I'm not going to wear a shoe. And it's already been mated. Moving around a little bit. You know what? I'm going to wear a shoe, just for more stability. Get in position. And there we go. Can't really see that, can you? There we go. All right, there's our big coal. Yo-yo, pressure hand brace, rawhide dog chew with brace end and base end of bamboo as a reload. Alright, so you're really going to like this next one. One day I was looking at a package of bamboo skewers, you know, for doing shish kebabs on the grill and things like that. And I was looking at that and I go, with that same kind of principle as I did with the rawhide, you know, dog chew, I'll bet I can bind that in order to support a bow drill spindle. So here's what I came up with. I took those skewers and I obviously cut off the sharp ends, and I bound them together with, in this case, hose clamps. one on each end. Okay, and then near the end where there would be a reload. Okay, now the center ones, the center skewers, I pushed up, and in pushing them up I created a brace end, which I rounded off and greased, and that stays together because it's bound together with the hose clamp. Now the bottom end, because I pushed up those middle sections for the brace end, that created a space in which to place a reload, of which is also bamboo. So bamboo skewers, bamboo chopstick reload, and guess what? Bamboo base. So we'll light this up real quick. Alright, so one of the things I want to show you too is using shells for pressure hand braces. Now, depending on the material you have to kind of keep an eye on the depression, the natural depression in there that is the socket. For example, a clamshell has these tooths that are on the inside. That's the hinge of the shell itself, and you can't hold it flat perpendicular across like this, because what will happen is that tooth area is going to cut into the brace end. So what you have to do is put the socket depression in the wrist area of your palm, as where it should be. Get your fingers around it, and you have to kind of hold it at a downward angle so that the depression is higher, like this, and then the brace end will sit up inside there so that the tooth, that's the hinge, doesn't rub against that brace end. So I'm going to demonstrate real quick mating this bamboo spatula handle, just to show you how that's done. Okay. And you can see him holding it down a little bit. There we go. And you can see that works very well. Now you have to be careful too, if you're going to do this for a while. The shell gets very hot if it's not well lubricated. Okay, and you start to burn your palm because the heat transfers. Alright, so I want to show you real quick some other pressure hand braces, and these are all made out of some kind of stone. I'm not sure what this is, but I think it's a gneiss, and it has a small depression in there. Now all of these are still need to be worked on. These depressions are not deep enough. So here we have two more kinds of soapstone. This one is held like this. So this is for like really small dowels, like this one, the bamboo. Here's another section of a kind of soapstone, which when you get this all shined up, comes out something like this after it's all oiled up. What's nice is they come in many different kinds of colors, soapstone. Some are lighter, some are darker, some are gray, some are green. Here's a river rock, which has the start of a depression in it, although it needs to be a little bit deeper. Okay, but things this shallow, you have to be very careful with. Just to show you real quick, string this, and you try to get that hole as best you can near your wrist area of your palm. Nice easy strokes. Now the depression is just deep enough, but it should be a little deeper, just to make sure that it's secure. Then you have this little one, right? Which goes like that in the fingers. Right. and this other one near the wrist area. You could say they all just barely do the job, although I would like the depressions, the sockets, to be a little deeper. Here's another special one of mine. This is pipestone from that Minnesota pipestone quarry that's so famous, and it's got that nice red sheen to it. So I don't use this one often because I don't want it to wear out. It's the only pipestone I have, so I'm just gonna show you that works real well. And that's a really deep socket for many kinds of size brace end spindles there. But we're going to do our soapstone. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do our bamboo skewer spindle now with the bamboo reload. Okay, all right. Okay, so we're going to do our bamboo skewer spindle, and we're going to use our Osage Orange half bow and our soapstone. So we're going to string that, right? And I'm going to wear a shoe, keep that stable. Our base is again the Western red cedar, right? A little thing of that. Now again, you have to give this hose clamp a wide berth away from the arch of your foot. And we also have the issue of the diameter of the spindle being larger than the diameter of the reload. We're going to get a lot of torque, we're going to get a lot of turning power, but we're going to get less rotations comparatively. Alright, so let's warm this up. Use the whole cord. Get as many rotations as you can because you have less because of the diameter of the spindle. Long strokes, plenty of speed. But we got a coal. That really busted out. Have two coals actually. They separated. So much for the stability of the board. We have a lot of torque because the spindle is a larger diameter than the reload. So we get a lot of turning power, but we're going to lack rotations again. Now again, I have to make sure that I'm clear of the hose clamps as they spin. Make sure that's away from the arch of my foot. So to make up for those lack of rotations, we're going to use the whole cord, go end to end, and we're going to do plenty of speed. And use speed to make up for those rotations. Let's see what we got. And there's our coal. I didn't put down my coal transfer device. And there we go. Alright, so my next one is a variation of what you've already seen from the mouth drill, and that is using the ratchets and the ratchet extensions for a spindle. Now here's a really large one, large extension, and this one is about 10 inches, okay, and this one is right now a 19 millimeter ratchet extension there, fits in there, which fits this reload of Atlantic white cedar, which I made, and as you can see, it's already fitted for that. Now what's great about the hexagonal shape of the inside is that it really grips the wood once it's in there for the torque, the turning force holds that in there once that's really wedged in there. However, once it really starts to slip, it really starts to go. So, but it works really well. This one's a little smaller. This extension is 6 inches, and here I have a 14 millimeter reload adapter on the end with, again, another piece of Atlantic white cedar, which fits in there. Okay. Now here's something that I didn't show you before because it didn't really apply. With the pressure hand brace, with the pressure mouth brace, I would just attach it right there. But here, what I did is I took a actual ratchet handle, took the handle off, and I did that with my grindstone. Then I went inside the gear mechanism, unscrewed that there, and I took out the locking mechanism of the gear. So now, instead of it spinning either one way or the other, it's a free spinning mechanism. Okay? So which means is that it can do the reciprocation now. It can do the back and forth. So this solidly locks oppositely, because now instead of the spindle, the brace end being the male end and the pressure hand brace being the female, the pressure hand brace is now the male and the spindle is the female, and it fits in there like that, and it's freely spinning. Okay, now to demonstrate, I'm going to do Atlantic white cedar on Atlantic white cedar with the bamboo bow. And what's funny is there's no chance of the pressure hand brace coming off. So get in position. I have the notch facing you as best you can see. Okay. Now it's really kind of funny to grip this small little thing, but you get your fingers around it. It's not going to smoke, obviously, although it can get warm. Let's get some warm-up strokes. It's starting to do that oval that I talked about before. So I'm going to swing my bow to the side a little bit. Actually, it won't work that way. There we go. Oop. It's the problem with a larger diameter. There we go. So give it time. It's forming. That was a bit of a struggle, but it's because it wasn't mated well. Now if you could see, the hole started traveling. If you could see the shelf here, and how it started moving toward the notch. Can you see how it's kind of oval now? Okay. You can see there's more wood here that didn't get burned because the hole started to migrate that way. Okay. All right, on to the next.